Welcome to Blue Talks.
Good morning and welcome to Blue Talks at MIT today. I'm really happy to be here. So, as organizational leaders and policymakers, do you actually understand the impact that you are having as you navigate an investigation around harassment? I invite you for a moment to just close your eyes, and I would like you to envision for 1 second that the emotions and the feelings that I'm about to share with you actually belong to you. Disbelief. Anger. You lose self-confidence. You have a sense of powerlessness. You're losing sleep. You can't eat. You're depressed. You even have thoughts of suicide. You have panic attacks. Your levels of anxiety are through the roof. When you go into the office every day, you feel humiliated. You feel isolated. You feel intimidated to the point where you're actually scared to go to work. You're missing work on a regular basis, and for the first time in your career, you feel like you need to take a step away and take stress leave or sick leave. Now open your eyes. How did that feel in your body? These are just a few of the symptoms that people that are either experiencing harassment or those that are being falsely accused of harassment, this is what they might be feeling. The problem that we face as leaders, though, is extremely complex because we don't have the benefit of hindsight. Until the investigation is complete, we don't know what side of the coin the investigation will fall or if it will land somewhere in the middle. And so we have to make sure that we are looking at it from both sides, because what we do know is that damage and trauma can happen on both sides of the equation when organizations are addressing harassment. And it goes beyond the well-being of the actual individuals. It impacts teams, it impacts families, and it can impact your organization. In 2020, I found myself in the unfortunate situation of being the recipient of workplace harassment. I was a senior leader in the organization on the executive team. I had years of glowing performance reviews, and I was being sought out by organizational leaders to coach and mentor them in leadership. I felt like I was at the top of my game. My then supervisor and I had been appointed to our positions simultaneously, so he had not chosen me to be a part of his team. From the beginning, he did not want me there, and from the beginning, he made sure that everybody knew. So as a coach, I dug into my toolbox, the same tools that I coach people to find and develop. I attempted to address it directly with him. And when that didn't work, I sought out the support of my colleagues, the ones that actually had a better working relationship with this individual. And when that didn't work, I elevated up the chain of command in hopes of getting some support from the top, only to be told to lead up. So unfortunately, after about a year, I couldn't take it anymore and I filed a formal complaint. What I wasn't prepared for is that the process of dealing with the investigation and the harassment was just as or even more traumatic than the harassment itself. See, harassment can show up in a variety of different ways. It can be anything from the overt to microaggressions. It can be verbal, nonverbal, physical. It can show up as coercion, discrimination, alienation, gaslighting, unwanted advances. It shows up in so many different ways, and it can happen anywhere to anybody. I actually encourage you that if you think that it's not happening in your organization, I would encourage you to look a little deeper, because it happens everywhere. So now I would like you to imagine instead a world where harassment is handled through collaboration and trauma-informed practices. Recognizing addressing harassment requires fostering a culture of respect, empathy, and accountability. We need to make sure that individuals feel protected from harm, That should be our normal. That should be our standard. But studies have shown that employees that are experiencing harassment in the workplace miss work more often, are less productive, and ultimately leave their jobs. We've all heard that people leave their bosses, not their jobs. And so there was a study that was conducted by the Society of Human Resource Management that found that 48% of individuals that reported experiencing harassment in the workplace left their jobs. Now think about that for a second. 48% of people that had the courage to stand up against harassment left their jobs because they didn't feel safe enough to be there. Sadly, I'm part of those statistics. I had to leave my job. So why do people leave? Because the systems that most organizations currently have in place are broken. They basically have made it a checklist of what they need to do when a harassment complaint comes in, and they've lost the human element. People are left feeling isolated, unseen, unheard, and ultimately unsafe. I've spoken with individuals like HR professionals that work with workplace harassment, and I've spoken with psychologists who actually treat people that are going through the harassment process. And sadly, what I experienced is the norm rather than the exception. And that's sad. So after I came through the harassment process and I started to do some healing, I started to wonder, what actually needs to change within these processes? How do we ensure that individuals going through this are not more traumatized through the process, whether they're are being harassed or being falsely accused? Because that happens. People are falsely accused. And so I started to reflect on areas where other dual-party conflict is happening. Areas where you're able to take a different approach in finding resolution and having a say in what that outcome is. So I didn't actually have to look very far, because after experiencing both divorce and harassment, I realized the striking similarity between what was happening. See, life has a way of throwing all kinds of curveballs at us. It might be losing a loved one, financial strain, job loss, harassment, divorce. But the emotions that we go through, the healing journeys that we go through, they're all very similar. And so it didn't take me very long to realize the connection between what I was experiencing in divorce and what I went through in harassment, how there could be some similarities in approach. So in 2013, my then husband and I were going through a terrible divorce, and we decided to use the collaborative process. So for those of you that aren't familiar with collaborative divorce, it's basically where the two couples engage with specially trained lawyers and other professionals, so it might be financial professionals, family specialists, divorce coaches like myself, that help to navigate the process and try and keep it out of the court system. The idea is that you are addressing the divorce process in a more amicable and less adversarial way, and fostering open communication and trying to find interest-based solutions. Now, don't get me wrong. Going through the collaborative divorce process was not sunshine and rainbows. It was still extremely difficult and very emotional. But I did find that I felt like I was more in control of the situation, and I also felt like I had a say in the outcome. I could actually have a say in what was going to be within the best interest of the solutions for my family. I did not feel that going through harassment. In the harassment process, I felt like I had no voice and I had no say in the outcome that was going to affect my career. So I did believe in the collaborative divorce process so much that I began my journey into becoming a divorce coach. So I'm a chartered professional accountant. I'm a university-trained executive coach. I recently became a registered collaborative professional and mediator. And so I get the opportunity to use my skills to help individuals navigate the divorce process and support them in every aspect of their divorce. Now, I recognize that collaborative isn't going to work in every situation, but I have seen it work. And so I feel like there's a way that we can make it work in the harassment process. Because in essence, collaborative conflict resolution amplifies the communication, negotiation, and compromise. It requires a willingness of both parties to come together and look at things from opposing viewpoints, seeking out common ground, and working through some strategic problem solving. It means everybody coming together and having careful dialogue. And I say careful dialogue because when you're dealing with conflict, you have to make sure that you're not re-traumatizing. So you have to make sure that you're doing it in a way that supports them. But I do believe that if we were to be able to engage in empowered collaboration, we can rebuild trust and we can lay the foundation and the framework for finding peaceful resolution. So is it any wonder that when I started to think about better ways to do it, my mind went to the collaborative divorce process, but with a twist. Instead of individuals working with lawyers, they would each be assigned an executive coach that is trained in collaboration and interest-based negotiations, just like registered collaborative professionals. Because if we're ever going to fix the problem with the workplace harassment processes, we need to make sure as organizational leaders that we understand the different triggers and tripwires that individuals going through these processes feel. Because what might be fine for one person can be absolutely triggering and traumatizing for someone else. And that's the foundation of trauma-informed practices. So if you're not familiar with trauma-informed practice, I'm going to walk you through the core principles. So principle number 1 is making sure that we acknowledge and understand the trauma. As I said, what might be fine for one might be extremely traumatizing for someone else. We need to foster a safe and supportive environment. That's where coaches can come in. They can help to navigate the situation and be advocates in trying to find that solution. We need to empower individuals and promote choice and control. These are people's careers we're talking about. They need to have a say in what happens. We need to collaborate and build trust back into the system. And we need to focus on the strength and resilience. This is a very hard process to go through. So failing to cultivate a space where individuals feel safe to speak up, it can actually lead to very significant consequences. And we need to be aware of that. Because ignoring or mishandling harassment just perpetuates a toxic culture where victims are silenced, perpetrators go unchecked, and morale within your organization is going to fall. Not having a safe space for reporting and resolving workplace conflict only endangers the well-being of our employees. And it exposes the organization to legal issues or legal ramifications, reputational damage, and ultimately talent loss. And it only perpetuates the cycle of dysfunction and abuse. So using coaches in this process can provide also one of the greatest benefits. Finding an interest-based solution that can work for all parties, as well as the organization. So let's start for a second and consider what the benefits are for the organization. Taking an interest-based approach signals that they're committed to fairness, respect, and it will bolster their reputation for dealing with conflict in the workplace. By resolving issues swiftly and collaboratively, there is a greater likelihood of creating psychological safety within the organization so that people feel empowered and safe in speaking up. That is the only way we're going to reduce workplace harassment. So for the individual that is raising the complaint, engaging in an interest-based approach gives them a voice in the system. It gives them a voice in coming up with a solution that will work best for them. But it's not all about just the resolution. It's also about them feeling validated and supported as you're working through it. Because sometimes you think you're going crazy, and getting that validation actually is helpful. And it's crucial to the healing process as you're working through it. And working through the resolutions on a more swiftly or a quicker basis might actually give them the ability to be able to go back to work. The longer you're away from work dealing with this, the harder it is to go back. So being able to go back is definitely a win. And you got to hope that by going through that process, they will actually feel empowered. So when you're considering the perspective of the respondent now, you got to recognize, as I said, sometimes they're falsely accused. And so if you can give them the opportunity for personal growth and accountability, and they can understand the impact of their actions, because I do firmly believe there are some that don't realize the impact that they're having. There is an opportunity for positive change. They can contribute to fostering a more inclusive work environment. That gives them the opportunity to learn. Because let's face it, if it reached the stage of having a formal complaint raised, there was something broken in that relationship. Even if the investigation comes back and does not reach the threshold of harassment, there was something between those two individuals that needs to be fixed. There was something that was broken that needs attention. So if as an organization, you are prepared to dive in and make a difference and create a psychologically safe environment, we need to make sure that people feel seen, heard, and understood throughout the entire process. And one way to help with that is to understand personality science and relationship intelligence. When navigating negotiation through conflict, think about it like this. When we understand where the individuals are coming from and we understand what's important to them, we can navigate those connections with a greater level of proficiency and make a profound difference in the outcome. When we understand the personality traits of the individuals involved, we can approach it in a different way, and we can approach them and work with them in a way that works best. It's about finding the common ground to make it an easier, more swift negotiation. And it's also about identifying potential clashes that might happen before they arise because we understand their personalities better. Because negotiations can be tricky, but when we understand what the parties value and what they're motivated to find in the resolution, we can change the way we talk to them. We can change the way we approach the negotiations with them. Because it's about tailoring our approach to the person's personality style as opposed to a cookie cutter. My time as a coach, I've come across a variety of different tools that you can use to assess personality science. The two that I found the most, and those would require a talk all unto themselves, so I'm just going to mention them today, is Bank by Codebreaker Technologies. It's a fairly new one, but it's very powerful. And then Strength Deployment Inventory, or SDI 2.0 by Core Strengths. Both of those modalities help us to understand how people like to be communicated with, why they make the decisions that they make, and how they navigate conflict. Using these in the negotiation process in addressing workplace harassment can be a game changer. So remember, it's about finding similarities and embracing people's differences as you work to find resolution in this process. So by creating a culture where people feel safe to speak up, you're creating a culture where you're building a workplace where people can thrive. When conflicts are addressed openly and constructively, it sets the stage for innovation and growth. That's the true return on investment. When people can come to work, feel valued, feel like they can give their best work and they're respected, even after facing harassment, that is the return on investment that we're looking for. So to sum it all up for you today, I'm going to leave you with 3 key points. First, we need to fix our processes that we have in place right now. We have to stop using the cookie cutter checklist approach and bring back the human element. The current systems are failing to bring adequate support to the individuals navigating this. Second, drawing parallels between the collaborative divorce process and addressing workplace harassment can be super powerful. And we can adopt a similar approach because addressing and bringing in collaborative means that we're empowering individuals to have a say in the outcome. We're promoting open communication and we're fostering mutually beneficial solutions. And finally, incorporating collaborative and trauma-informed practices into conflict resolution can lead to so many benefits, including coming up with interest-based solutions that are beneficial for all the parties involved. And when you couple that with personality science, it can be a game changer. So now that you have this knowledge and you're armed with some of the information around bringing in collaboration, empathy, and understanding every facet of how this can work, we can resolve conflict in our workplaces, in our communities, and in our homes by using a collaborative approach. So the time for change is now. I invite each of you to connect with me to explore how we can bring a collaborative process into your workplace and really make a difference. Thank you.